I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that Grimgar of Fantasy and Ash hasn't been praised enough for its fan service. When people review this dark fantasy anime, they tend to focus solely on scenes of violent struggle, most often this first battle with a goblin. I've seen at least 3 videos that break down this fight in great detail, but literally none that spend time discussing this series' abundant sex appeal. This could be because many anime critics consider fan service to be a trashy distraction that almost always subtracts from a show's quality, or it could be that the male gaze is overused in media to the point that there is nothing new to say about it. And you know what? Those are entirely valid criticisms. Fanservice in anime is generally pretty sleazy and slimy and caters almost exclusively towards straight guys. I am well aware that I'm being pandered to when the camera repeatedly shoves this girl's booty in my face, but I'm also not too proud to admit that over the course of the show I ended up becoming more attracted to her than I initially thought I would. By the way, her name is Yume, and that's not just me giving you context, the show wants you to get to know her as well. Because believe it or not, there's a lot more to her than just her bangin' bod. Unfortunately, the first 2 episodes don't provide much evidence to back up my argument. Grimgar is rather front-loaded in terms of showing the female characters' bodies in an objectifying way. A symptom of the anime industry's desperate need for money is that even shows considered somewhat mainstream have had to become more sexual right out the gate in order to entice the presumed lonely creepos who watch this stuff. Is it cynical and annoying? Yeah, 100%. It's a cheap tactic to make weak anime stronger. On the internet, the defense of sex sells comes up a lot, but I don't want to hear that from people who by and large don't pay for their porn. Besides, if seconds-long shots of anime girls in sexy poses is all it takes for someone to whip out their wallet, they're probably also easily fooled by beer commercials and other corporatist parlor tricks. If I'm drifting off topic, I apologize. I generally don't cover material this horny on my channel, and I want to make sure I'm approaching this subject with some level of tact. Now let's get back to addressing Yume. So between episodes 2 and 3, there's an implied incident where the boys, in a pervy campaign led by resident dickbag Ranta, tried to peek on the girls while they were bathing. This episode begins with the boys begging on their hands and knees to be forgiven, except for Ranta, who continues to be a massive asshole. One thing leads to another, and suddenly there is this rift between the girls and boys in the adventuring party. The girls rightfully don't feel secure under the same roof as guys who would creep on them, and because of Ranta's stubbornness and their own understandable guilt, the boys can't seem to make things right. Then there's this scene where Haruhiro, the audience surrogate because there always has to be one, goes off with Yume and they actually talk about the issue. Rather than this interaction leading to further conflict in the group, the two manage to reach an understanding and vow to move past it. The consequences of the situation are given more screen time and importance than the peeping incident itself. It's not even shown in the series proper, in fact, and if you really wanted to see it, there's an OVA, which still barely shows much skin. To me, this is an acceptable way of balancing the admittedly shoehorned trappings of fanservice tropes with actually believable characterization. And more to the point of this video, this is the scene that crystallized Yume as the type of person I could see myself being attracted to. There were of course hints of humanity before, in her endearing personality and in the shopping montage of episode 2, which I totally defend as legitimate development for the cast, but what this scene did was on a whole other level. It didn't make her more likable or more badass, but it did establish her as someone who is willing to communicate. And let me tell you, that is hot. Damn, girl. You'll hear me out while providing your own perspective so we can reach a common ground in our disagreement. You really know what I like. Just want to sit you down and talk about our feelings all day. Whoa! That was definitely creepier than the show could ever be. But you get what I'm saying. There's a lot more here than just TNA. What I like about Grimgar is that it's willing to present its fan service in a way that feels remarkably mundane. It's an anime that says, sure, you might end up living with a total hottie suddenly, and you might find yourself checking her out a bit at the beginning, but you still gotta respect her boundaries and communicate with her like a grown-ass adult. And over time, if you remain in close proximity and a mutual bond develops, the two of you can become good friends who truly care for each other. And that's what happens in the show anyway. Did you expect me to say that you get to hook up with her? Fat chance. You watch anime. For a lot of people, the core appeal of Grimgar of Fantasy and Ash is that it's grim. It's an anime full of life or death battles, each of which carries a real sense of intensity and weight. But for me, it's very specifically the feeling of proximity that the party's shared living situation evokes. To just know that, at the end of the day, You've got cool, sexy friends around you who have your back is probably the best fan service there is. Especially because, when you watch Grimgar, you too are a cool, sexy friend. Remember how I said Haruhiro was the audience surrogate? Well, the audience is you. You get to be that boy. You get to stab goblins with daggers like a cool guy. And you get to grow closer with Yume over time while both of you and all your friends work your way up through this grindstone society from the very bottom. You get to live this moment. The moment where I mean you, have never been more attracted to Yume. And if taking down a fantasy monster together isn't half as good as getting between the sheets with her, I don't know what to tell you. But you, my friend, are missing out. So yeah, Grimgar of Fantasy and Ash. An escapist fantasy for lonely straight guys, or the escapist fantasy for lonely straight guys? For all my bluster about being against pandering and seeing fan service as sleazy, I definitely was caught hook, line, and sinker by this show, and I hope that all of you are too. Well, so ends another chapter of JUNC, the month where I just lose my mind. I'll be back tomorrow-ish with more content, because that's the promise I've made. That's the life I lead. See you next time, everybody! Do-do-do-do-do-do! Memes.